Thank you very much. I just sent a text to my wife saying that we should look at NYU Abu Dhabi for our kids. I'm not even kidding. So thank you for inviting me here. Thank you for letting me moderate what I think is going to be one of the most extraordinary panels and half days I've ever been a part of. Some of the smartest people in the world discussing some of the most complicated issues. Thank you to the Aspen Institute. Thank you to Kitty. Thank you to Andy. Thank you to Tamkeen. Thank you to Abu Dhabi. So what I like about cybersecurity is that the consequences are massive, right? They're massive for us individually. They're massive for our societies. They're massive for companies. It is the future of warfare. The stakes couldn't be higher. And the interesting bit is that none of the questions involved are easy. When you dig into any of the big questions in cybersecurity, it gets really complicated quickly. The bad guys kind of blur into the good guys. Sometimes the good guys blur into the bad guys. The trade-offs wrap your mind in circles. One of the ways I like to think about cybersecurity is thinking about it on a couple of different levels, starting from the individual and moving up level by level to the nation state. So when you think about it on an individual level, there's the really interesting question of how do you protect yourself, right? We all want to be protected. We all want to be safe from hackers. We don't want our bank information stolen. But there are complicated trade-offs in there, as this cartoon makes clear, because the only way to be truly safe is to not use the internet and not engage in these amazing things. We had a fun debate yesterday about whether to connect to the Wi-Fi here, right? Makes you susceptible to hackers, but if you don't connect to the Wi-Fi, you can't really do your research. You can't, email people. You can't connect with people. You miss a whole lot. I had another debate yesterday about whether to delete all your tweets, right? Should you delete your past tweets? Maybe. There's a bunch of personal information about where you were. Maybe your mother's maiden name is in there somewhere. Also, some buddy's probably going to go dig through them and make you look bad for something you tweeted at some point. But there's real value to having your tweets up there. So when you think about cybersecurity, even from an individual level, it gets complicated. Well, now let's think about the people around us. Do we want them to be anonymous? Do we want them to constantly be worried about cybersecurity and deleting all of their trails and be impossible to find? Do we want to be communicating with this guy? Maybe not. I certainly don't want, I was in the conversation yesterday with Cassandra and Becky. I was saying don't delete your tweets, in part because I like everybody else's tweets to be out there so I can research them when I'm writing my stories. In part because all the information on the internet leads to sort of the collective human consciousness, and the more smart information up there, the better it is. But on the other hand, if people don't feel safe, then they can't really be themselves. And if they can't really be themselves, you have a free society. So it gets complicated. There are real advantages to letting the dog on the internet. There's some disadvantages. Okay, so let's go up another level. There's been a really interesting debate at Facebook just in the past 2 weeks where Mark Zuckerberg put out a memo saying that Facebook views on encryption are completely changing. They're moving to end-to-end encryption in their messaging. They're going to make their messaging platforms interoperable. They're going to use disappearing messages. General response is that's great, right? It makes us all safer, right? The messages disappear, everything's encrypted, that's good. But inside of Facebook, it was actually super controversial because Facebook is finally figuring out how to stop misinformation on its platform. It's finally figuring out how to thwart bad actors. It's set up all kinds of systems to prevent kids from, committing suicide on the platform. If you make everything hidden, you make everything encrypted, suddenly that becomes harder. So some of the top people at Facebook fought this. One of the very top people, the person I thought was going to succeed Mark Zuckerberg, resigned. So really interesting fights about what you do with information. Is it really better to make everything disappear? Is it really better to make everything secure? Or should you trust the company to keep people safe? There are interesting trade-offs between protection and safety, personal protection. All right, let's go up another level to the corporation. Companies have amazingly complicated questions with cybersecurity. If they find their systems have been breached, but they don't know that anything's been stolen, do you tell people? That's hard. Yeah, you probably should, but if you do, you might freak them out. Companies are the targets of nation-state hackers, but companies are multinational. So are they responsible to the government of the country where the founders live? What government are they actually responsible to? And how do they keep themselves safe? This is an amazing story about the NotPetya ransomware hack, which took down huge parts of the economy. It was mostly focused on Maersk, the shipping giant, which was basically rendered inoperable for a couple of weeks because of a hack by Russians against a Ukrainian tax software, of all things. So how did Maersk recover? Amazingly, one of the Maersk offices in Ghana had a power outage when the ransomware started to spread. And so there was one disk with the backup of Maersk from Ghana, where they had not been online, that they somehow had to get to London to put the whole systems back up. How do you keep yourself safe in that world? Well, then let's go to the area of the nation state, final level here. This is super interesting. What are the responsibilities of a government? You want to keep people safe, but you also want them to feel free. Should you work to make sure you have an entrance, a back door, a front door, a side door, into software? There are real advantages to that, but there are also real risks. What do you do in an era of cyber warfare, where clearly the tools that we're going to use in the battles of war are going to be technological. They're going to be based on artificial intelligence. You certainly can build defensive AI for cyber war, but what about offensive? And what are the limits on it? So those are some of the questions I hope we'll be debating today. We have an extraordinary group of people from all elements, every tier that I've just talked about. We have someone absolutely brilliant and experienced to talk about it. We're going to go through some of these questions. Ideally, in a couple of hours, I'll have some more answers to some of the questions that perplex me.